welcome to another edition of Inside Look. We are on location today with Bob Cody. We've got some exciting things to talk about. I should just mention where we are. We are under what used to be railroad tracks, right off of Ellis Road. Out behind us is Route 120, and probably about 3 or 4 par 5s down the street is the CVS at the corner of Routes 1 and 1A. We are here to discuss the Metacomet Greenway, the association, its background and its history. Bob, let me begin by asking, how did you become involved in this?
Well, it is kind of an interesting story, at least to me. I've been bicycling for some years, various distances. I take part in long distance events, and the streets can be kind of dangerous, especially when you're going around the downtown areas of a lot of cities and that. So I happened to be looking at the map one day of downtown, and I noticed an unbroken parcel of land that goes from the Plainville line all the way over to Route 295. It crosses a couple of roads here and there. And a little research reminded me that it was a railroad right-of-way that had been abandoned in the early 60s. And I started doing some research. I contacted some people in the town, and I went online looking, and it turns out that I wasn't the first person to notice that. There's another group of people that I've joined who have found the same thing and thought it would be a great way to put a bicycle path in, going from Walpole all the way down to Cumberland, Rhode Island, where hopefully we could meet up with another group, another path there. So we got together, mostly informally, and then we incorporated a little over a year ago so that we could actually get some recognition from the state and from other organizations.
I know the trend as far as bicycle paths in cities is to, and it looks really strange, instead of the cars parking right up against the curb, they park maybe 8 feet away from the curb, and that space in between is a designated bicycle lane. It's something cities do, and I know Providence is doing it to try to encourage people to take their bikes to work. I don't see that being very successful.
Not around here. Downtown, north and south Washington Street, it's fairly narrow. It's one lane in each direction with parking, and you start taking parking away, then you're really going to hurt the businesses. And the Greenway, as we envision it, should actually help businesses.
How old is the association? I know 501c3 nonprofit corporation. How long has this been going on?
Well, as an incorporated group, a little over a year, but there's like a core membership group that I didn't join up with at first. They've probably been meeting 4 or 5 years, informal discussions among themselves, informal discussions with various organizations within their respective towns.
How about the name, Metacomet? I know, and as a matter of fact, I was talking to Jared Ware as we were riding over here. There was Metacomet Country Club in East Providence, has since gone out of business. The name Metacomet, I know nothing about it, and how does it relate to this specific project?
Well, Metacomet is the actual Native American name for a Native American political and military leader, known a lot around here as King Philip, as in the King Philip School District. The Old Colony Railroad referred to this branch as the Metacomet line. So it's our way of honoring our recent local history and also the history of the Native Americans who lived in this area.
How many members are part of the Metacomet Greenway Association, and how does one become a member?
Well, you can go to our Facebook page, Metacomet Greenway, and you can sign up there. Give us your name and email address. Right now, there's I think we've got about 50, 60 people who are members of the group who, regularly correspond with us. 35 members or so who regularly contribute to, or attend meetings, the group meetings, and we have a board of directors consisting of the 7 officers and board members, of which I am one. So we're not huge. but we are growing.
Well, every organization starts out small, and I should take this opportunity to mention that Bob is one of the original incorporators of North TV, was the board's first president, was president for a number of years, actually goes back to the Cable Advisory Committee, and when Comcast wanted to wash their hands of local cable television, Bob and a few others stepped up to help form North TV. So none of us would be here if it wasn't for Bob Cody. Why a Greenway, Bob?
Well, there's a big increase in the interest in passive recreation, which is people out there on their own, as opposed to joining a sports league or something. The pandemic, the past few years, a lot of the exercise people would get had changed. The health clubs and all that were closed down temporarily. So a lot of people discovered walking, running, bicycling, skateboarding, rollerblading seems to be making a comeback. And while that is fun, and I like to do most of those, it can be dangerous in the town roads. It can interfere with traffic. People aren't used to seeing bicycles or even groups of people walking. And, there could be accidents. I don't think there's been anything serious in the past couple of years, but greenways, recreational trails, however you wish to refer to them, can put you in a nice, safe area to do whatever recreational activities you like.
I envision, as you're saying this, I guess the Greenway, the bikeway that runs along Route 6, portions of Route 6 on Cape Cod. I know in Wellfleet there's an area where it passes near one of the beaches, Newcomb Hollow Beach or something like that. Is that what this group envisions for this area?
That's exactly what we envision. Cape Cod had some of the first of the rail trails in the country, and the people who organized it put it together, and it takes a lot of coordination between different municipal entities, state entities, and in the case of railroads, federal entities. You take these abandoned areas like where we're sitting right now, and you make it almost into a linear park that people can enjoy. And another more local example to North Attleboro is the Blackstone Valley Greenway, which runs from Valley Falls up into Woonsocket. And it's envisioned to go further up into Worcester, all the way into Worcester. But if you find yourself, if you have been around a while, you know where the old Lonsdale Drive-In was.
I do.
There's a parking area there. They reclaimed the swamp, and the trash-filled lots. And now there's, I shouldn't say they reclaimed a parking lot. There's now a swamp, marsh, wetland area. It's a lot cleaner than it used to be, and it's enjoyable. I've bicycled on that many times, and I've seen deer, foxes. You can hear bullfrogs in the water. It's really nice. It's a nice respite from down there. Is a pretty urban area.
Oh, absolutely. Walkers and runners and bicyclists together. I feel like that should be followed with "oh my," but is that a safety concern when you have people walking, or are there rules when you're on one of these greenways?
There are rules, just like there would be in any traffic situation. If you're in a wheeled vehicle, bicycle, or even if you're on a skateboard, you keep to the right. If you're walking, you walk facing the traffic, the oncoming traffic. And it is up to the people who are on bicycles to get out of their way. Pedestrians have the right of way on the greenways too.
How fast are some of these bicycles going on these greenways?
Several of them, like there's one up in the Milford area called the Upper Charles bike path. They actually have a 12-mile-an-hour limit. I've seen people exceeding them just like you see people exceeding it in the car, but generally speaking, people are conscious that they aren't alone. And it turns into a very friendly environment. You'll have the various groups of runners, walkers, bicyclists all waving to each other, and if you do it on a regular basis, you get to know who's going to be out there at certain times of day, and you say hello to them. You greet them a half a mile from where you usually do. You're thinking, who's late, who's early?
this is not going to be inexpensive, that is for sure. Where is the money going to come from for this to happen? I mean, I'm looking above me, behind me here. Those railroad beds are so overgrown. They need to be cleared. They need to be paved. They need to be lined. You're talking how many miles? How difficult is this going to be?
It's going to be difficult. There is some good news. As you know, this passes through several towns. Let's see if I can name them without forgetting anybody. Walpole, Norfolk, Wrentham, Plainville, North Attleboro, into Cumberland. Several of the towns are at various stages of not, I wouldn't say completion, but planning. Several towns have done feasibility studies, which is they hire an engineering firm to say this is what it would take to build a path in that area. There's developers who own some of the land along the way. Some of them are already saying, yeah, we'll build that section of it for you. And we have an engineering firm who's giving preliminary design saying this is what it has to meet, because the state has regulations on bike paths. You have to be a certain width and other safety considerations, especially if they're going to be paved. There's a developer, I believe in Plainville, who is putting up a large commercial development. They're putting in a paved trailhead so that people can park and get on their bikes and for short distances. So it is ready to go. I mean, there is one town, I don't want to mention it, but their DPW is set to fire up the bulldozers and chainsaws and get going. But we have to say, okay, we've got to do this in a nice, cohesive manner. So yeah, there's enthusiasm. North Attleboro has a way to go, unfortunately. Because here, the big difference is the land is mostly privately owned. And so, discussions will have to be held with the landowners and people who also own land abutting the railroad right-of-way. They've been used to it for, 60 years or so of not having anything behind them. And now, well, there'll be people walking or riding bikes behind them, their houses. So there'll be a lot of people that we have to talk to and a lot of concerns to listen to.
How about in Plainville? Do you know much about Plainville?
Plainville, they're making progress with the feasibility study, and there are some neighbors who voiced their concerns, and everybody will be listened to and work something out. We don't want anybody thinking this is a terrible thing.
You mentioned there is one town who you won't mention. They're ready to go. Realistically, when, as a cohesive group, can this get started?
We probably won't see real progress end to end. I would say 5 years would be optimistic. Like I said, depends on how talks go with various landowners along the way, where the path is in private hands. We'll probably see sections of it built over the years, but we want to follow a cohesive design so that when it's done, sort of like the interstate highway system on a much, much smaller scale, you won't feel uncomfortable going from one section to the next.
I'm looking at some of the information you sent me, some of the challenges and some of the changes since trains went above us here. Housing, you mentioned housing has been built in some of the areas over the original right-of-way. Interstate 295, there was no Interstate 295 when these trains ran. The railroad made several grade level crossings of roads that were at the time lightly traveled country roads. That's no longer the case. Wrentham and North Attleboro bridges across busy streets were built with granite abutments. They still stand, as we can see. And parts of the right-of-way have sunk into the wetlands it traversed. That's probably the biggest challenge.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I have spoken to engineers in the past. The wetlands can be traversed. It's, probably something along the lines of sinking piles and pretty much having like a bridge decking along the way, which is what you'll see in the Blackstone Valley area. They'll have some bridges are 30, 40 feet long that go through the swamp. And those are kind of nice because you can actually stop and sometimes see wildlife. And I've seen people actually fishing off them. Not that I eat anything I pulled out of that area. Not yet, anyway. Maybe a couple of decades
I
from
know
now.
I wouldn't.
So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue. The formerly lightly traveled roads, and they aren't far. Some aren't far from here. Down where Chamawa Golf Course is, there's a set of the bridge abutments that you could actually get here if you walked a straight line. That road's busier than it used to be. So any bridges that get rebuilt would have to keep in mind the kind of traffic. There were no utility lines in some areas before, but they exist now. So we'd have to work with Verizon and the local power companies. But one of our goals is it's not just recreational, it's also historical preservation. And our group is in agreement that these granite abutments are historic. When they put the railroad through here, pretty much changed the life of the people in North Attleboro. It was a farming community, but this made industrial processing a lot easier, moving your goods from one place to another. The farmers, they weren't just local dairy farmers anymore. They could send their milk up to Boston and down to Providence without any delays.
Yeah, it's amazing the area we are. If you're fairly new to North Attleboro or Plainville and you've never been on Ellis Road, we were on our way from North TV. I came up Roosevelt Avenue, past the Amvet Boulevard School, came in that way. I don't know what that street is, but they finally paved it with what used to be the worst street in North Attleboro, right off of Ellis Road, leading up to Amvet. Pembroke Road? Metcalf Road,
yes.
I've been told. But one of the people in the car said, are we still in North Attleboro? Because this area of North Attleboro is so different than the Route 1 area heading northward.
Right. This is really nice, which is why this area is so popular. You come here, especially on weekends in the morning, along Ellis Road, you'll see a lot of people walking their dogs, walking in groups, running, riding bicycles. So paths like this can make people a little more aware of their towns. When you think about what this would look like, the northern end of this path would be in an area that's being developed for over the years, and you would take it would actually go through the densely populated downtown area, within a quarter mile of North Washington and South Washington Street at places, which is why it'd be so convenient. It also would link a lot of recreational areas. And then it would come down this way and you find yourself in basically the woods and wetlands, and you get a good look at how things have changed and parts of the town that people aren't even aware of. Most of the people, like they take Route 120 if they go into Cumberland, they don't even know this area exists.
I hate to be the naysayer, but let's talk challenges again. 5 years is, some would say, is too long, some would say is ambitious. Having so many different towns involved, would it be easier if the Greenway Association was working with the state to get this done, or would the state not have authority in these towns?
We will be working with the state,
okay,
because the biggest challenge, as with any large project these days, is money. You yourself said this will be an expensive project. Again, I'm not an engineer. I had I'd heard people talk about some rules of thumb per cost per mile, but gee, everything's gone up lately.
Oh, right, yeah.
So labor and materials. So those rules of thumb are out the window. But there are grants available from the federal government, state government, non-government organizations. There's a group called Rails to Trails, which specializes in projects like this. The idea is to get on their radar and show them the importance of what you're trying to do. And ours, as I said, it's historic, cultural, recreational. Fits all kinds of areas of interest for people.
Are there greenways similar to this, and maybe even the Cape Greenway, where there are areas where, because of privately owned land, because of the challenges and how the old railroad bed has changed, that parts of the trail do have to go on public roads?
If they don't go on public roads, they will be definitely detoured off the original right-of-way. which we understand has to happen. As you said, and as I mentioned earlier, houses were built in some areas. For people to build their houses there, they had to get all sorts of approval from the State Department of Transportation yeah, this is no longer going to be a railroad. So yeah, go ahead and put your house there. There are other places where, you know, other roads have been built, so we wouldn't want to be sending people through a major intersection. So yeah, we won't be following the route exactly. As much as possible, yes, because as I said, it gives the people an idea of the different kinds of environments in our area, as well as keeping people aware of the history.
To the best of your knowledge, take me through the route here in North Attleboro. I know over to the left of Chamawa's golf course's 17th green, there's these granite structures similar to what we're seeing here. I believe it goes out near where Camp Shady Pines
Exactly.
used to be. I'm going to say used to be a lot, where things used to be. I'm showing my age. I don't know how it probably comes off of there over to here. I know Roosevelt Avenue, there's a similar structures. High Street, the road that leads up to Heather Hill Country Club. So I vaguely have an idea where it is, and we do have a map that people can see.
Yeah, there is a map. I'm hoping you can insert it afterward. But it will take people in North Attleboro. It'll start in Plainville, and actually there's probably a Plainville reference that's a little easier for people. I'm not sure, that might be Bacon Street, where the Hilco Eyewear Company is.
East Bacon or West Bacon, or one of the two.
It's one of the Bacons, I believe.
Yes, I love bacon.
There's a path going through there. The DPW for a couple of towns, I believe North Attleboro and Plainville, actually use that to run some of their underground pipes. I think it might be for water treatment.
Okay.
And that would take it down, crossing at least one road. I think it's Fuller Street, which would then, going further south, goes toward Whiting Pond,
Okay.
within a stone's throw.
Okay.
So there's another example of a recreational area that could be linked by the Greenway. Following that down, you would, and you can see this if you go to High Street, where the railroad used to be. I'm not sure what a challenge that would be, if there's a tunnel underneath that road or not. Maybe not. Which from there would take you through, not downtown, but parallel more or less to North Washington. And then as it travels further south along what is now Broad Street, there's condos and all that abut the land. So I'm sure those folks, they might be interested. And if you following there along, you wind up to where we are now. Going further south, like you said, it's almost a straight shot down to Chamois, with 295 in the way.
Yeah. And then eventually, which that straddles the Cumberland line.
That goes right into Cumberland, and they have expressed interest in that area for linking it all the way to the Blackstone Valley.
Oh, that would be sensational. It makes too much sense for it not to happen. There are many challenges, and we've talked about it. How can someone watching this help make it happen? How can they get involved?
Well, they can look at our Facebook page and sign up there if they're interested. That has a lot of the information, some of the stuff you've referenced. You can talk to your favorite town councilor, contact planning board, rec board. We've talked to various town groups, town agencies, and there's an interest. It's a matter of getting it prioritized, moved up the ladder, because like any town, we've got a lot going on. We've got motor vehicle traffic, schools, people want to be, make sure the schools are kept up as they should be. But I think Greenway is a good way to do it. We're a very recreational oriented town. We love our sports and we love our activities, and this would just be adding one more for people to take advantage of.
I know master plans North Attleboro's had. I don't know about Plainville, but the last questionnaire, excuse me, that I believe was on the town website, passive recreation, greenways like this were part of that questionnaire. I'm not sure what the final results were, but I find it hard to believe someone would say, no, we don't want more areas for passive recreation.
I think there's only so much money out there, and people are concerned that money directed toward the Greenway, would that be taken away from a road project? Would that be taken away from, some other thing like maintaining one of the local ball fields? So it's a balancing act, and that's why, as I said, most of the town agencies and politicians we've spoken to, they're in favor of it, but it's like we have to work together and to, figure out how everything is going and how everything is going to fit. But with the fact that we want to bring in groups like the Recreation Commission, historical, the conservation people, this is all part of it. And there's a conservation area a couple hundred yards up the road from here that people can walk and hike. And this would just be an extension of it.
Is there a possibility, and has the Metacomet Greenway Association discussed, 5 years, that's the plan, but maybe it opens in phases, a few towns, so the third town isn't ready, but there's no reason we can't build the first 5 miles of it and open that up, or will it all be opened at once?
No, as you suggested, it would be mostly, I'll almost certainly be done in phases. As I said, one town's pretty much ready to go. Others have been, had feasibility studies done, and they're looking at, okay, we put it in, how do we pay for it? Let's get those grants and everything applied for. Other towns, it's like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's talk about it a little more. So, yeah, you will see the Metacomet Greenway built over the years in sections, I'm sure. And
I'm sure by 1 or 2 towns opening up their section, it puts a lot of pressure on that next town to, hey, let's get on with this. This thing is great. We want to be a part of it.
Right. I don't want to make pressure sound negative, but let's just say it's encouragement.
Yeah.
You hear about people from your town saying, oh yeah, we're going to take our bikes up to Plainville and then ride from there up into Rentham, Norfolk, and Walpole. Stop at a restaurant along the way or a bar or something. The people around here are going to say, well, that's great. We should have that here. There's no reason we can't. And that's how a lot of things get done. Let's face it. There can be, for example, a school system gets a certain type of technology or something. The other towns say, that is a really good idea. We should do that, especially once they see it in action.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, for more information, to get involved, go to Facebook, Metacomet Greenway Association, MGA for short, Metacomet Greenway Association. Bob, pleasure seeing you again.
Always great seeing you,
Thank
Peter.
you for helping get North TV started way back in 2005, 2006. That wraps up this edition of Inside Look, Metacomet Greenway Association on Facebook. Thanks for watching.